This presentation is about the lift design for Adam Tower in Amsterdam. And I want to share with you some of my design challenges we faced during the last 2 years in transforming this tower into a multifunctional tower. Also, I want to tell you about the modifications we had to do before and after commissioning of the tower to make it all work. And I'm going to show you some of the results from a recent traffic measurement we did in May this year, and we extracted data from the lift controller. I've chosen to give you a general overview of all the logistical aspects involved that we took into consideration. But if you're really interested in all the numbers and details behind that, please refer to the paper. So Adam is a refurbishment of an existing tower, which was a former Shell tower in the north of Amsterdam, an 18-floor tower with a traditional office use. And now it's been refurbished to a multifunctional tower with all kinds of stacked functions. There's a new crown added with a public function, an observation deck. And Adam actually stands for Amsterdam Dance and Music. And this tower is really the epicenter of the Dutch and international dance and music industry, which is world famous for house festivals, etc. And this is actually a 24/7 party tower. Yeah, it is. It fits, it's Amsterdam, right? So just to give you an overview of the functions involved, we have, let's see, does this work? Yeah. We have, at the bottom, we have a podium, which has general functions and a living lobby for all the functions above. We have a tower segment, which has a hotel at the bottom, then a couple of office floors, but they're all related to the music and dance industry, so they're all like Gibson guitars and massive music, etc. Then we have a loft of 3 levels. It has a reception at the 16th floor, and that is used for all kinds of launches, parties, conferences, weddings, etc. There's also a members club at the 18th floor for all people involved in the Dutch music industry. And then we have the crown, which is a public area. It is the first and highest observation deck in Amsterdam at the moment. It has an indoor observation deck on the 20th floor, outdoor on the 21st, and a revolving restaurant below on the 19th. And obviously there's a lot of food and beverage functions in the top and in the basement, as well as clubs to have the 24/7 feel. Just to give you an impression of the atmosphere inside this tower, all the functions have different finishing, but most of them are quite extravagant. And for instance, you can have a swing on the rooftop, and there's a lot of partying involved, including in the basement. And the same applies to the lifts. Apart from the logistics involved, all the lifts have different finishing. And also here they're quite extravagant sometimes. Some of them are interactive with screens responding to your entering the car, with music quotes, with the diagonal shape of the tower represented in the buttons, an interactive dance floor with a mirror ball, etc. We have the experience shuttles servicing the observation deck. It has an experience mode, which means that when it's turned on, you have a higher acceleration and a higher speed. And the lights in the car go down. You have a glass ceiling and a music and laser show, which guides you all the way to the 20th floor. So what were the challenges we faced? This was a former office tower with only 4 shafts in the core for about a 500 people staff. And we had to turn this into a multifunctional tower with about 6 to 8 times as many traffic per day as originally designed for. On top of that, we had to facilitate different special services for goods transportation, as mentioned in one of the previous presentations, and for VIPs, sorry. Also, we had to expand the service range of the lifts to the new crown area above the original 18th floor, and we had to solve this puzzle within the original existing core of 4 lifts. If we would have given all these different functions their own dedicated lifts, we would not have been able to solve this puzzle because we would have needed at least 6, 7, 8 lifts in that core, and we only had 4. So we had to come up with a lot of logistical and organizational measures to make this work. First of all, luckily our client really embraced the idea of mixing traffic in those lifts. So the dedicated idea was off the table quickly, and we used the central core as a mixed-use lift core, combining all the flows for the hotel, the offices, the loft, etc. And obviously there were optimization possibilities from the reverse traffic that we could take from the different functions. So that really gave a boost to the capacity. Second very important measure is that we took out a lot of stops within the range of the lifts in normal operation. Of the 21 floors, we only serve 13 in normal operation, and 8 are only accessible with authorization by key cards. So that is to improve the cycle time of the lifts and thus improve the capacity. Also, to be able to accommodate the huge flows of traffic, we had to make multiple lobbies, because the original lobby on the ground floor would never be large enough to accommodate all these flows. We made a second lobby on the first floor for the observation deck traffic. So now we have a ground floor lobby for the hotel, the office and the loft, and we have a first floor lobby for the major public flows going to the observation deck. Also, from a functional perspective, we split the tower from the crown. So we now have a ground lobby serving all the tower floors up to and about the loft with 4 lifts, excluding some of the floors that are not serviced in normal operation. And we have a new lobby for the lookout shuttle serving the first floor to the crown. In terms of goods lifts, that interesting topic, because we also had that problem. And we chose to separate the distribution, the internal distribution of the goods from the delivery times. We had to, because there were hundreds of goods flows every day. So what we did here is we introduced time sharing for one of the lifts to be considered a goods lift. And you're only able to distribute your goods between 6 and 8 in the morning. And all the participating functions have to agree on their time share. And if something is delivered outside of that window, it has to be stored in the basement. We added goods lifts between the ground floor and the basement to be able to uncouple those flows, and it will be distributed the next morning at 6 o'clock. Obviously, there will be exceptions, but that is the general rule, that there's a goods window between 6 and 8. Also, we anticipated quite early that the combined flows in the building, that the morning peak would be dominant, because we would have the combined breakfast peak for the hotel and the up peak for the offices. So we anticipated that we needed all 5 lifts in the core to be able to serve that, which means that the observation deck shuttle can only start with its experience operation after 10. So that serves as a good lift between 6 and 8, and it serves as the main lift in the 5 group in the core between 8 and 10, and after 10 it's the experience shuttle. Maybe some of you mentioned that I'm talking about 5 lifts now, and that's because we were able, after all, to fit in an extra lift in the core. In the bottom half of the tower, where the hotel floors are located, we did not need any toilet groups in the core anymore. So we took them out, and we were able to fit in an extra half a lift, going only to the top floor of the hotel. Also, obviously, because all the lifts have different service levels, we introduced destination controls, and we added a lot of local lifts in the podium and in the crown to accommodate local traffic and to keep that out of the main core. Finally, for the observation deck shuttle, we were able to improve the speed and the acceleration and the load to 2,500 kilograms, which gave it an enormous boost in capacity. So this is the new vertical diagram. Here on the left you can see the original one from the office use, going to the 18th floor with only 4 cores. Now we have 4.5 lifts, the half lift for the hotel added, and some lifts extended into the new crown. We couldn't extend all of them because there were all kinds of general facilities here and firefighting stairs, so we could be able to extend 2 of them to the crown. And we added extra food and beverage lifts for all the service points here, an extra goods and parking lift here, and extra stairwells to give a lot of free space for the main core of 5. During the design phase, we built up a daily profile for this tower, and that included all the individual functions. I think that in the simulation program we had hundreds of sheets stacked on top of each other to build up this program. Here on the left you see the combined functions without the lookout traffic, and you can still identify the morning peak with basically the hotel and the office in it. You can see the lunch peak related mostly to the offices, and you can see the evening peak, which is partly hotel but also, for a large part, all the events going on in the end of the afternoon, going all the way into the night. And one of the special things in this tower is that you can see the enormous amount of traffic still going on in the evening and in the night. And it only slows down between 4 and 6, and then the goods transportation starts building up again. If you include lookout traffic, it blurs the whole image, but I have added it anyway. But obviously that is dominant in mainly the afternoon. Initially in the design phase, we made a lot of simulations to be sure that it was going to work with 5 lifts, and to be able to conclude that we could take 1 lift out for the outlook traffic in the afternoon, for the lookout traffic. If we did that, including the lookout traffic with 5 lifts, we were in trouble in the afternoon with relatively high waiting times, because that lookout shuttle would be stopping all the way through, and we would not be able to use its higher speed and higher load as we wished. But if we took all the lookout traffic out and placed it in 1 lift, waiting times were very acceptable. And for the remaining 4 lifts, apart from the breakfast peak in the morning, it would be acceptable as well. Also some recommendations from the design phase. Apart from the time windows I told you earlier about, we recommended that all the peak traffic related to special events on the 16th floor, that's the loft, and on the 2nd floor, which is the beer garden, took place also after 10 o'clock in the morning, to not interfere with the morning peak, and to take place in the lookout shuttle as well, so not in the regular 4 lifts. And we advised them to service the restaurant, revolving restaurant, on the 19th floor from the 20th with a stair, the hotel traffic between the ground floor and the 1st floor, to serve it from the parking lifts and the podium, and to not allow as much internal traffic between the tower and the crown as not to interfere with the separation of lifts outside of the morning peak. The final very important issue in the design of this lifts is the authorization required to make it all work. We have an intelligent integration with keycard access system, and that is not only to be able to work with all those authorized levels to take them out of normal operation, but also to prevent people that have no issue in the building from getting in the first place. And finally, also to prevent lift tourism of all the people who are in, of trying to have seen every single lift in the building. That would interfere with the capacity we needed. So you need authorization to use certain lifts, and if you want to see all the lifts, you have to book a hotel room or visit the observation deck. And all these authorizations for all those different users, they have to be customized and adjustable in the future. So just prior to and after commissioning, there were certain things that had changed during the design process, certain clients in the building that had different wishes, and we had to accommodate to that. Just take you through a few of them. First of all, as we have in a lot of projects, there were too many cards issued. There were a lot of authorizations given to everybody who thought they were more important than the rest, and we had to apply a stricter policy in issuing those cards, and even revoke some incorrectly issued cards. Because in the first traffic measurements, there was still 20% traffic going to all the floors that was supposed to be locked down. Also, there appeared to be a lot of interfloor traffic we had not anticipated earlier. First of all, the kitchen for the lookout and the loft was on the 17th floor, and kitchen personnel was supposed to take the stairs between that and the food and beverage outlets, but they used the lifts anyway. Also, the client chose to put the back of house offices for the loft and lookout functions on the 8th floor in the tower, which is very suboptimal because there was all kinds of interfloor traffic from the crown to the tower after all. And we advised them to replace that office somewhere in the crown, but they couldn't find the right area for it. There were some problems with the doors initially because we had more than enough capacity in the observation deck shuttle, but sometimes the remaining 4 lifts were suffering. They were saturated, and people started holding open doors for each other, putting goods in between. And there was also some remaining construction and modification going on, so we had a phased commissioning with all kinds of activities already started while the lifts and the building was not ready yet. But we had to introduce nudging to activate the forced closing anyway. And just from a practical perspective, when we first observed the use, they were cleaning the lifts during the morning peak at 9 o'clock in the morning. That is something about communication between the client and the users. So they should have singled out that window as not being able to clean. So we had to remove that to slow hours. And again, about the goods, all the users had given me their numbers on the anticipated goods flows. And still, we found after commissioning that there were about 2.5 to 3 times as much good movements per day as originally intended, which meant that we had to extend the transportation window to 8:30 very soon. Last but not least, there was a lot of ghost passengers involved. We saw a lot of people getting into cars they hadn't assigned for, and that is, as stated before, a very difficult problem to solve within a destination control system, because we have sliding doors, we don't have turnstiles, so we cannot force people to all put in their call individually. Finally, we did a traffic survey last May. The building is now completely in use, and we took this from the control system. Here you can see a daily profile of the registered movements over a 12-day period. This is an average profile, and you can still see that morning peak, little dominant, and the afternoon peak with all the events. But the lunch peak is not as dominant as we thought before. But this is still the defining moment in the traffic. And those are the waiting times, which are, on general, they're excellent, especially considering it's a destination control system. So even in the peak hours in the afternoon, waiting times are generally between 30 to 40 seconds, which is, considering the amount of volume of transportation, it's quite good. And in the morning peak, where we have 5 lifts instead of 4 in the central core, waiting times are excellent as well. If you look at the distribution over the height, it is considered a problem that we have a little slightly higher waiting times in the crown. Obviously, that is because we only have 2 out of 5 lifts servicing that area. But if you just look at the numbers, it's still considered okay. It's 40 seconds on average. And if you visit those mass public observation decks, there's actually no problem if you have to wait a couple of minutes to go down. Actually, the client who is operating the observation deck would have been happy with a 45-minute queue outside, just to give people the indication that something exciting is going on inside. So actually, it's doing too good at the moment. This finally is the origin destination matrix that we retrieved from the control system. Here you can see all the traveling between floors, and you can see the hotel segment clearly. The few most busiest floors are obviously the ground floor, the 16th floor where the loft is, the 20th floor where the observation deck is, and the first floor where all the traveling from the observation deck comes from. But there is some weird things going on here. This is still the 8th floor with the back of house office for the lookout and observation deck, taking a huge portion of the traffic capacity. And we have some people on the 13th and 14th floor apparently not wanting to use the stairs. There should not have been stops anyway here. So they're singled out. You stop at 12 and then you use the stairs to 13 and 14, but some have been authorized to use these apparently. And finally, there's a huge number of users to and from the 18th floor that's supposed to be authorized as well, but that's the members club. So they authorize themselves probably. To round it up, just looking at the tower now and the anticipated number of movements, we are now at 60% of the maximum design level we originally anticipated. And the room for growth is in the observation deck shuttle. It is maybe 50% occupied now, so there is much more capacity there. In terms of commercial success, the tower is a big success in terms of media attention and planned events. But it's anticipated to grow even further, because recently there was a north-south metro line opened in Amsterdam connecting the location of Adam directly to the city center. Also, the This is Holland pavilion was opened next to Adam, and combined with the film museum that is also next to it, it's becoming a touristic hotspot. And you can already buy combi tickets. And also from now on, Adam is growingly being mentioned in all types of touristic sites like TripAdvisor. And in the coming year, the international tourism will certainly grow. So for now, we can conclude that this tower is like a living organism. It's changing all the time. And so we have to be able to anticipate for that. And we still have room within the capacity of the lifts to make these changes if necessary. It has enough flexibility and capacity left. And just to give you a last impression of what is probably going to happen in this tower, in the next Amsterdam Dance event, which is going to take place next April, they're going to build here the first vertical festival, which means that you have music and dance on every level all night long. Usually festival trains are horizontally oriented, but they're going to make a vertical festival. So we'll try to help them solve that as well. Thank you.